This podcast is brought to you by Mapper Forward's new Patreon community, the Global Coffee Think Tank. Check the show notes or head to patreon.com/mapperforward to find out how you can become a member today. We are back with Brian Gaffney from Coffee Adjacent, which we haven't figured out what Coffee Adjacent is yet. I'm not sure that Brian knows what Coffee Adjacent is, and we will figure that out at some point. But we are... Obviously, this is the Daily Coffee Pro by Map It Forward. I am Lee Safar, the host, and we are exploring specialty coffee from the perspective of the consumer. And this is the last episode in our series, which I'm kind of sad that this is the last episode. I've got to be honest with you, Brian. You are delightful to have a conversation with. We've explored a bunch of topics, what specialty coffee is, what branding problems we've got with specialty coffee, what we're doing right and wrong in specialty coffee, all from the consumer's perspective. In this episode, we're going to talk about what progress you would like to see the industry make for our consumers. As we move into, let's say, the next decade, what progress would you like to see the specialty coffee industry make for its consumers?
That is a big question.
Yeah.
It's huge. And I can only imagine that your listeners are probably coming up with far better ideas and far more things of what can improve than I will, but I'll try. I think one of them is I really want us to start thinking about it as a relationship, Lee. And as you improve any relationship, right? It starts with communication. And that's the first place where I think the industry has to get better, is in its communication with consumers. And quite frankly, to distill that a little bit more, I think the industry has to become a better listener. I think the specialty coffee industry loves talking at specialty coffee consumers. I don't think it's particularly interested in talking with specialty coffee consumers. And I think that's the first place, is the communication has to improve to deepen the relationship, which deepens trust. And trust is important in my mind, Lee, because if you tell me that you have to increase costs, but I trust the conversation we've been having, then I don't necessarily think that you're trying to take money off of my back to put into your own pocket. That because of that trust and because you've listened, because you've been more transparent, and then when you share with me that the costs of coffee are going up, why are they going up? Because of climate change, because of issues with weather, because of the cost of shipping, right? Even if we just think about just moving containers, right? But without the trust in the relationship, we can't have those conversations. And so I'm always, as a consumer, going to be suspicious of that transaction. So that's one of the things, is really around that communication and that trust. I also think a better use of technology. I think that really thinking about how you create a holistic experience for a consumer that allows the consumer to be in charge of the amount of information that they are taking in, and when they want to take that information in, to be able to continue the journey kind of at their own pace. Have to become a better user of all of the technology that's available. And in many ways, again, we've talked about opportunities. I think that there are fantastic opportunities to see startups to apply some of this technology in coffee that can then be able to create platforms that can then be licensed by the different roasters. Everyone doesn't need to become the next startup, but we do need a few to be able to improve the industry. So the communication, trust, technology, and then it's the experience, right? Coming in to purchase a cup of coffee and being able to support the person who's coming in for the daily kick and the person who's coming in because they're super curious about your latest offering. So that idea of wayfinding, that idea of product engagement. I'll give you another example that I'm just fascinated by. I just bought my first roasted coffee from Untitled Coffee in Greenville, South Carolina. Just the way that they've used their email marketing, from the emails that I received prior to buying, which let me know that the coffee was on its way, and it wasn't your standard, here's your order confirmation number, it's going to arrive on this date, but the personality of the roaster was in the email. And then the second one, I think, was probably around letting me know that it was shipped, right? The coffee was on its way. The third one was around brew techniques, right? So just in case I didn't know, And then the last one that I got before the coffee arrived was how to properly grind your coffee. So this idea that even before the coffee arrived, this relationship is started. I'm curious to see what happens post, right? A week after I get the coffee, how will that relationship extend post-transaction? So this idea of experience in the virtual and the physical worlds, I think is ripe for exploration. That's something I'd like to see. I'd like to see the specialty coffee industry become more comfortable talking about price, right? It seems very afraid of it. And here's, almost 20 years of marriage in March. One of the things that I have learned about relationships is it doesn't get better by avoiding difficult topics, right? Quite frankly, things begin to mount, right? Distrust begins to form if you don't have those difficult discussions. So the industry has to become not only a better listener in that communication style, but it has to figure out how can we improve the way that we're conversing with our consumers, with our suppliers, right? With the rest of the industry, right? We talk about the value chain, but we've got to figure out how the value chain becomes a web that enables conversation and connection across the various nodes. So as opposed to thinking about it as, point A, and you just follow things along the chain, we have to get far more multidimensional. And then finally, we have to make specialty coffee special. And that's going to mean a number of different things to a number of people. And I don't even know that if I attempted to say more than that, I could do it justice. But for each roaster and cafe out there, that when you decide to do this, what point of view are you bringing to it? What about specialty coffee is special for you? And then that's what then gets translated to me as the consumer, so that it doesn't feel like every other shop is every other shop. And so this idea of defining specialty beyond cup score, beyond the packaging, beyond the layout of the cafe, beyond the uniform that the barista is wearing, but really defining what specialty means for each and every specialty coffee professional, I think is another area that needs to be improved for the future of the industry.
There are some amazing points. Mistrust, communication, the tech side of things, the experience, the pricing, and making it special. That's what you're saying you would like to see progress made in. I have a couple of questions there. From the tech perspective, how would you as a specialty coffee consumer feel about automation?
So automation is a huge word. So what exactly would we be automating in the experience?
The brewing or the sales experience or the whatever. There's so many different places that automation will absolutely be implemented, given the economic struggles that we're facing from our labour force is experiencing a significant amount of permanent shrinkage.
Right.
So either we're going to experience, and I believe that this is how it's going to go in the next 12 to 24 months, we are going to see a number of cafes have to close. It's still with a de-escalation of the saturation that we're experiencing in our industry, we're still not going to experience enough desaturation for our labour force to have a comfortable balance.
Right.
The only opportunity we're going to have is to subsidize that labour force with automation, whether it's in roasting, whether it's in the mechanization of that's already available but not implemented because of the cost in the warehousing of what we do. But the same thing with regards to the cafe experience. And so how would you as a specialty coffee consumer feel about your cafe experience shifting from a barista to a coffee concierge?
So, full transparency, I love the idea of automation. I think for two reasons. I think it's necessary, and I think at this point it's undeniable. But here's right, again, if I can play with that DJ we talked about a couple of episodes ago, the idea between the barista and the DJ. There was a point when a DJ went to the party, the DJ would bring crates and crates of vinyl and wouldn't be able to get through all of it. Now in this age of automation, the DJ can bring hard drives and have access to this multitude of music that's at his or her disposal. I think that if we limit our thinking that the best that a barista can do is prepare that pour over by standing and pouring that water at particular pulses over a particular period of time, I think we are misrepresenting the value that the barista can play in the experience. And because quite frankly, a machine, I'm the person who makes it every day. A machine can do that job. Let's let the barista do what the barista is best at, which is engaging with the customer. As a matter of fact, I'm hesitant to engage with the barista because I don't want to take too much of the attention away from them brewing the coffee. But what if while my coffee is brewing, we could have an experience about, something that's just hit the menu or something that's coming up that they're excited about, that because of what I've tried, I might also be interested in. Or we could then talk a little bit about some of the challenges I'm having brewing at home. If we allowed automation to play a bigger role in the cafe, then we could really upskill baristas to have higher value roles than they currently do. So let's the highly repetitive, mechanizable aspects, let's let machines do those, because there are some things that only the human interaction can do, and we're not fully utilizing those today.
I love that. And to preface what I'm about to say, I'm 100% with you. I think that we've got to lean into automation. But let's use your DJ analogy to steelman the idea a little bit more, if that's possible. When you look at the role that a DJ has compared to what a musician has, and I say this as someone who is in the music industry, it can get very confusing for fans, which is what's music? Is it the band that, you've got the guitarist and the bass player and the drummer and the lead singer, they're all creating the music from their own hands? Is that what we should call music? Or is the DJ playing to a big crowd at a festival, is that music or is that not music? And which is more valid music, right? Well, it's both music when you're the receiver of the experience, I guess.
Right.
But do we intrinsically, as consumers of those products, of the DJ versus the live music being played by a band, is the intrinsic experience that I'm having as that consumer affected by one being created from the hands of the musicians and the other by a DJ? And going back to the coffee analogy, I think you see where I'm going with that, right? With regards, so what are your thoughts about that? Like, how, if we steelman that idea with regards to coffee, do you think that people are going to think that one is more valid than the other, if it's created by a barista or not?
I think it depends on how we position it, right? I think that if we allow, a consumer to come in and think that unless this is poured, right, by hand, right, in the same way, but let's to tease out the music piece, so the music is created, in my mind, many ways the way the coffee is created. But the presentation of that music, which is what the DJ is responsible for, right? It's the presentation of that music. So the coffee has been produced. Now we're talking about the best way to present that music that's been created, and that's the DJ. So if, as a consumer, what I know is that the same way you have, right, is it the sound engineer, the recording engineer, who's responsible for making sure I can get everything I can from that music, the highs, the lows, the mids, because it's been so well tuned, that work is still going to have to be done by the barista. And then part of what the barista can share as I'm standing there is why the pulse rate on this East African coffee is different from this one from Nicaragua, right? And so that which starts to open up an entire other world of conversation and interaction between the two. And now, as a consumer, now I have a reason to even ask about the coffee from Nicaragua when I might have only been interested in the one from Ethiopia, because I now see in this orchestra of coffees that are brewing, it's not all the same. So the idea to start seeing coffees as being unique from one another may be heightened if we bring mechanization in a way that we don't see today.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And carrying your analogy even further, for the DJ, he's not just presenting you with one song. No. Start, stop. It's the way he's positioning the whole experience. That's what delivers the enticability of it. It's the variety that comes with it. He's not just one flavor of music. He can play a song by Queen and also a song by Armin van Buuren next to each other, and you might not have even heard of Armin van Buuren, but you're riding off the wave of the song from Queen because you've probably heard from that. Yeah, you've given 100%. Me so much to think about, sir. Thank you so much. And there's so much we didn't even cover that I thought we might get into, but you're going to have to come back again so we can have another conversation.
Lee, it's been an absolute pleasure. You and I have had, before this, a couple of conversations. So to be able to sit with you, chew on these ideas together, tease them out has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you for the time and the insight. To the listeners, thank you all for the time that you've given Lee and I to listen to the conversation. Hopefully there's something that's been shared that's been a little insightful, either positively or negatively. Like, I'm okay if there was something that got under someone's craw. And so you, in opposition to it, you want to go do something. I think that's exciting as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Thank you.
How can people get in contact with you so that when you do figure out what you're going to be doing with the coffee adjacent brand, which I'm very excited by, I've got to tell you, but where can people come and find you online?
Sure. On Instagram, I'm coffee_adjacent. On Twitter, I'm coffee_adjacent. Or you can always email me at Brian, BRIAN, @coffeeadjacent.com, no underscore.
Awesome. We will have links in the show notes. Brian, this has been an absolute joy. And I would be honored if you would sign off this episode for us.
Lee, it will be a pleasure. Friends, thanks for listening. Peace, love, and peanut butter.
Word. Thanks, friends. If you enjoyed this video, here's what you should check out next. Consider supporting Map It Forward on Patreon and be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell before you leave.